Dage Gyamtso Jebe dāgē
Jinzo
jēnsā jēmbē
Sonam
sōnām jēndōlā bēnsē Drabā yō zemjēn damjē devā dān devē jodān dēmbār jodjē dōngā dān dōngār jē jodān drabār jodjē dōngār mebē devā dāmbā dāmbā drabār jodjē nyerē jādān nyedān drabār Tanyo jembola nebar jorje semje damje devadan deve jodan dembar jorje dongar je jodan ravar jorje dongar mebe devadan badam ravar jorje nyere jadan nyedan rar Tanyo jembola nebar jorje semje damje devadan deve jodan dembar jorje dongar dan dongar je jodan ravar jorje dongar mebe devadan badam ravar jorje Nyeren jada nidan rave danyo jembola nebar jorje Dada zemje damje lo chuzun rawar jinje lamda zor Chulamda rawar jinje lamda zor Lamdraba savar jinje lamda zor Churba yeshe son jawar jinje lamda so Dada zemje damje lo chuzun rawar jinje lamda so Chulamda rawar jinje lamda so Lamdraba savar jinje lamda so Churba yeshe son jawar jinje lamda so Dada zemje damje lo chuzun rawar jinje lamda so Chulamda rawar jinje lamda so Lamdraba savar jinje lamda so Churba yeshe son jawar jinje lamda so Lama Namla Guzan Lama La Gozan Guba Jimbu Zorwande Dominelo Rangun Trubad Senda Trapa Nyambara Sinje Lo Zaza Gandu Zoji Lama Da Reza Trapta Jimi Nipjinje Gandu Jandra Dijin Raka Barwa Dorje Drakpo Zorwande Rana Dondro Nije Tabjin We Kadan Yenga Nage Sila Pep Rangjung Yeshe Publications Tanyere Kansal Yobe Chudona Batamji La Shoba Delekata Detan Linda Tene Nangata Nyambe Simji Tam Jitinji Dewa Lana Meba Yandaba Zobu Sanje Guru Rinpoche Tobar Sati Jita Dagitari Tambe Chusamo Kangi Chokgyur Gyamtso Lama Jo Nyamba Toma Kono Sanchon Chodo Toki Ne Chusimbe Kunju Dembe Goni Sin Tsar Tela Kangi Simbar Sabe Chuja Ramba Ne Tene Da Guru Rinpoche Ko Musu Son Rabo Re Tene Techin Chokgyur Lingpa Ke Terma Tene Lama Rangjung Dorje Drakpo Tsal Chala Lamre Hin Chimbo Nani Mata Kyoho Dre Tene Mantune Teni Kandrole, Nabaninja Do, Teni Topta, Kibota, Pubu, Nani Simbarkatin, so Chiate, Nazo Chu Chini Garesina, Semna Prona Yabo, Tanga Karwa Zamboyen, Samnireka Karma Chitu Jane, and Chitu Nin, and Nima Jane, and Semna Prona Yabo, and the Trona Degatin, Lunga Is and Tamji Deja, so Teni. Chun number Tabari Jul Jetaviata, Teni Soso Zopo Detang, the Tsangala, Pinto Chimbo, the Sen Tronan to Jondo, Tronan, the Chula Tronau, Dorija Jadir, Chu Namdan drop to the Sen Pinto Commodity, some Nubiti Sam the Gole Young Secretary, Sen Tronau, Chizukarma Jil Gomna, Dawa Jil Gongeli, Nupanda, left of Gary, Tronamina, Loda Dawa Gomdina. Manuna Harecha Pinto Sandogo, Harenuko Jomari Churiman, Mato Jagger, Semna, the Tuki Young Karet, and the Trona and the Timber Scenes ours.
Good morning, my Dharma friends, those near and far. Please generate bodhicitta as your motivation for listening to the teaching with the thought that all beings throughout space must achieve the state of permanent and perfect happiness that is perfect Buddhahood, and that it is in order to bring that about that you will listen to and practice the profound and holy Dharma. We are concerned here with our continuation of the exposition of the stages of the path called the Essence of Wisdom, which is a terma discovered by the great Tirtan Chokgyur Lingpa, who was like the reappearance of Guru Rinpoche himself in person. When we listen to the teachings, they will be far more beneficial, and the experience will be far more pleasant if we listen with enthusiasm, joy, and relaxation. Somehow, even 1 minute of listening to the Dharma or meditating on Dharma in a state of joy and enthusiasm is more powerful than months of listening or meditation, which we force ourselves to do. We can even feel the difference in our bodies. We become physically more at ease and more comfortable the more enthusiastic we are. So when listening to Dharma, you may find it helpful to reflect upon how fortunate it is that you have this opportunity. Appreciation of one's good fortune in this way, it leads to enthusiasm, which leads to joy, which leads to relaxation, and that makes the whole thing much more powerful and obviously much more pleasant.
Tene nipa sita tarangi hie de lam rinpa niki nyamne ke pondong ke tole hie ko tanga so tu janda zo ta jeram da lam rinpa ni ze je zo ni re tene zo nga zo ta zo ram na de hira nyamne sing ke nyong nyong re te ngo chupo sing ke nyong nyong re de jeram ko ni nyamne sing ke ka ma ma re ten de taran ti thon ni ma hyo ko de re zo ram nipa na je zo je pondong da ni Jibarambada Zobaramba Pondo no Tambo Tela Yang, Jibaramba Tela, Sabjin number Ni, Tela Yang, Ni Tela, Jerkieba, the Serag Kieba number Ni, Banani, Jerkieba, Jerkieba Tela, Dangarumbo Cheke, Kandison, the leads. Oh, younger Rumbo Cheke, Kandison, the leads. Nang de jeram nang dong choda dang gang nang hla dang de yong rang sem da hla ko ronyam nang si ko sta de pe ke chen bo ta ti chai de hla ko yer jing thok thi teng jing pe so ta ti chai kam ba som de ke tin ja de ma ji songpa te nang rinpa ni je nang de rinpa ni je tengen zhen la zar jong je pondong pe tsar yang si zar jong de pondong sar ya de tang ne zo kin ke sa kin na yo re de da zo kin ke zo re zar jong ya de pondong yang de so pe ke chen bo re de so de zai ha ko san de ni hyar dan hyor la de ni nyam ne pe ja chen bon jong ko de ri pondong pe tsar yang thomar kan da je ren Jatabo Gomya Nangla Rangjung Mandra Par Sitandi Tonda Nga de Pe Kechembori Janda Mebade Nangla Rangjung Mandra Pa Tongbe Zongni Choda Tawar Gomba Sab Tsortan Sitate Janda Nga So Jeram Hiepa Kapso Hieko Liri Jeram Je Kopori Choda Taw Panang Namkunja Sondaw Chananga Dazo Taw Tate Ze Gomma Tup Songna Lobo de la Zobo de la Bea Hyanda Neja Amte Hyukchimbori. The Amte de Pa Jangmatam, the Jeram Resarbori, Yongya, Kali Kawari. The Amte Himba Jango, Chito, Tadeson Kodri, or Deri. The Nuda Jujan number, Kang, Nawa de Tamdi, Yadam Laye, number of Gombe, Jacheval and Joba Dance. They the coach Jenny Yeni, Yen the Yog Sordo, Mazogan. The Tata New Jun Tata Tamji Yare Kang drop the order. Jankorgon Kolo drop the order. That thing also Hako Gomes and Ha, De Hamo and Ha Tonda Hako Mari. The Sanga 산ning jude 용조노 조제 더서 기억하되 얘네 예견데 여기 처도 가서 오래마도 저게 이 가전에 로서 사드니 임바리오 말이 향감세야 돼 대자체 대양 랑게 샘저 로자레 로스 트바메베 gonkin 샘다 곰자 사건이 돈다 춘이도 로냐버 히바 단세 대 다고 제름다 나와니 고 얘네 디 나와 담제 랑가자리 랑가자 건더상보 랑자르도 건더상보 하게 생로 디 잘라 선적 나와데 나서 가도 가말 적진 히를 가서 히에거로 나와 디자 혈니 보다 데니 데랑아서 하마오는 철성들이 하고는 건더상보 통은 데레자 상기에거로 나서 대철 가래이 마다 하고 지그저도 적진 조라면 되고 공고로 왔다 적진에 되고 공고들이 대 샘저로 짜임바 희소나 샘 코랑거랑 짜임바를 희소나 되니까 나와 담지 향감의 차로들이 향감도 로서 요 말이 대하고고 대성고 나 샘저로 짜를 로서 접하면 봐 공킹게 샘다 곰작 라거니 일미된 상님마다 타대바리서는 저거 말이 라 졸리 임바로 nga 졸리 gonki nga 졸리 카하라 우산데 다디 리찬 존데 동다든 좋고 말 데니 일미도 강근 리디우 삼네 산이 된 리디오들이 다다게 샘데라 라고 용조 드네 창데오들이 야로 세다 제바들 라고 범라다 세와 장메바 샘 냐지 본 디토라 창디오들이 샘 코랑 거라 예담라 포모 용서 조바데 라고 용조 드네 점네 디오들이 대파자르샤 대처템네 데네 예미드 리디우 산네 동담게 된데 디삼나 동야데 게쳔보리 동다 큐닝한다 산이 지네마도 라다 란셈 타테바리 산나 란드야 요마리다 라세야데 요마리 동니나 란데는 절니까 라다 란세 예미인 지차드 라크 란드럽사리 조데리데 큐니도 로냐바르 히바타 나게 세베드빈 직팅 간자 란종 이히제 라크 데네 여토도 연계 조바 용도 동담베 제철 당 다코 데데 다다 고니 히바 데나게레 나게네 헬리콥터 다 든르리도 다다 건접게 차니 히 동담게 차니 건접게 값이 히바데 동담게 차니 산이 천진데 동담 디토데 건접 디토데 동담데 파 점도 걸으면서 건접도 동담세야 타데발이 요 말이 건접도 값자 요 말이 건접가 나와 다다 남지 산이 동담가 값자 드네 파르 대랑리도 다다가 게니 맥은 통도 전도소 산이 향칸리도 근데 직보 향칸리도 히에거면서 대마 히는 상하히야 말이다 산이 에레 파 밀리리 향칸리 쳤죠 나서 네 포르바데 파 밀리리 라 쳤죠 네 포르바데소 사거리다 근데 라리다 메토 사건데소 메고 데서 혈매단데소 나와탄 사거리다 라포 산이 쳤점된 데소 파점도 다다가 가서 꾸반 직딩 그 꾸반 디토데 향칸리도 다다 가서 그 딘직딩 그 꾸반데 향칸을 파점도 걸 산제 그 더적된 더니서 더 차럽게 또 산제 장면 대나 초랑 그 gond 텔라테네 대 살바르 쳤점네 다단 직딩 나와 마다바 나와다니 파 메인 대처전에 대말이 다다 마다바 나완데 다바인 거. 나 대히 거리다. 저 상하기도 대히고 다다 마다바 나완다 탐지 고라기가 다바리도. 근접 그 마다바 나완다 탐지 다바가 차리도 사니. 디삼도 대히 거들이 대마히나 되는 상하세야 돼 고톱고 말이. 라그 드네 여토도 연기 조바 용접 동담비 제처 당서 대 너무 예 초적 열도 또 적강성야 초적 다다 나와 장이 나라 자처와다 메가 종제바다 나베 잔니바다 고르름보체게 책된 레옹 담나나 오리 더소 탐지 루크 렉자 라면다 초야데 초적 나와 다다 탐지 땡가 저거 특유나 가장 히 차르 초적 또 적강성야 로버 톡티 데마 타바라이랑이 코나레 히베 델레 차네 라이랑이 염바 히소나 된 나다레 섬상하 추고 정말 저거 다다 힌데 전도 노한데 저데 디갑세 된 점도 콜 라이랑이 코나레 히베 땡인전 로몬 타예바베바 근데 땡쟁거 로바 땡쟁거 자 땡쟁거 노바 땡쟁거 두어 땡쟁거 간탑데도 나서데 나서 같이 틀 요바데 ngaso 소소소소 가레 레ison 요바데 히마레 다롱 아라베 하레바예 삼디오 뭐제 뭐마베는 ngaso 하레바난게 레바 창마데 ngaso 건도장보리데 오르데 연바데 미히네 인다르게 nga인 사니 nga 쳔보레예 nga 님보레예 사니 ngajar 로바르 컨데디오 디 ngajar데 짜바니네 메와 라이 ngajar데 쳇트었던 데니 ngo네 타르토바가 ngajar데 줄렙타비 데데 땡쟁 로몬 타예바 베바 데 나바 nga이 제름 제 용딘제 보용와 오송 다 디도
Yesterday, we concluded the first section of our text on enhancement or progress, which was concerned with external progress or outer progress, meaning primarily how we relate to appearances in post-meditation. And now we turn to the second section, which is internal progress. And internal progress means how to enhance or to bring progress in the practice of the generation and completion stages specifically. Now, Lama commented at this point, more people seem to be practicing the generation stage at this point than are practicing the completion stage. But in any case, everyone is concerned with the practice of both, so we will go through these. Therefore, there are two parts to this, progress in the generation stage and progress in the completion stage. And the first of these, progress in the generation stage, also has two parts, general and specific. So general means, in this case, as you'll see, 5 points or principles that, according to Guru Rinpoche, are essential for the correct understanding and practice of the generation stage. So first, in the root text, internally, practice the generation stage as empty appearance, like a water moon. And that everything that appears, or whatever appears, is the deity. And furthermore, that deity is also your own mind. Seeing your mind and the body of the deity as of the same flavor. Increase samadhi through the recognition that everything that appears and exists is the body of the deity arisen from the ground of being, arisen as such from the ground of being. In that way, everything you encounter will increase samadhi. Internal progress here means progress in the three in your samadhi of the two stages, generation and completion. And so what we are concerned with in this section is the cultivation of our skill in these two stages, the techniques of the two stages, and thereby continuing to progress in them. Lama said that this term, the cultivation of skill, while it's found in both the Mahamudra and Dzogchen traditions, is more evident in the Dzogchen tradition, where there's a great deal of emphasis on the cultivation or increasing of skills that one is beginning to develop in meditation. Now here, first of all, as a general explanation of how to properly practice and thereby progress in the generation stage, there are 5 points. The first is that when we begin to practice the generation stage, of course, the faculty that we are using is our imagination. It is imaginary. But regardless of how we are instructed to use our imagination in the creation of this image or set of images that make up our generation stage practice, this first point is that it is essential that we recognize that the image or images are empty appearances. That is to say that while we strive towards a vivid and living appearance of the deity, we must not lose sight of the fact that it has no true existence. So it is empty of appearance, like what are called empty forms, which are things that you can see that are not really there. So this first point is called the profundity of the generation stage, or what makes it profound. And what makes the generation stage profound is the recognition that the appearance of the images is empty appearance. The second point is the vastness of the generation stage. And this is that when you imagine yourself as the deity, which is the, we could say, the root technique of the generation stage as we practice it, you are not in fact limiting the image by applying it only to your own body. You do identify your body with the image. And Lama pointed out that this is one of the reasons why you must see it as an empty form, because only by seeing the image as empty will you be able to overcome your fixation on your body's apparent coarse substantiality. But you are not limiting it to your body. Whatever you see, whatever appears to you within the environment and among the beings who inhabit that environment, all of that is recognized to be the body of the deity. So in that recognition, you imagine everything as the deity, everyone as the deity, not just yourself. So that's the second point, which is the vastness of the generation stage. The third point is that the mind, your mind, that is imagining all of this, is not other than the image, the idea of the deity. When your mind takes the form of the image of the deity, it is your mind taking that form. The deity does not exist outside or other than your mind. Lama said this is very important because our minds fundamentally are Samantabhadra. And whatever deity we may be meditating on, it is ultimately a way to realize Samantabhadra, the nature of our mind. But if we think of the deity as other than our minds, then there is always the possibility that we can project demonic qualities on that deity and actually turn the deity, at least in our imaginations, and into a demon that will come to haunt us. So the third point is that the deity is nothing other than your mind. And this is not something you are reminding yourself of. This is true. Because in absolute truth, the deity is the display of Dharmata. And your mind, nature, is that same Dharmata. So they are, whether we know it or not, of the same flavor. Therefore, it's important in the practice that we come to know it. So that is the third point. The fourth point is that in our imagining everything that appears and exists in the world as the self-arisen body of the deity, we are not pretending. Lama said, if you think that you're imagining something that is untrue, you don't understand the very basis of the Vajrayana. Imagining something that is untrue would be pointless. It wouldn't get you anywhere. You can't change things by pretending they are other than they are. What you can do is learn to acknowledge and eventually see them as they are. Now this means that actually everything, absolutely everything, as it has arisen from the ground of being, has always been the body of the deity. When the generation stage is perfected, this will manifest fully, visibly, to our senses. That means, Lama said, that we shouldn't think that we want to get out of here, get rid of this world, get rid of this realm, and find the deity's pure realm somewhere else. This realm is the deity's pure realm. Our task is not to escape the world, nor to transform the world objectively, but to learn to see the world as it is. This table in front of me, this vase and the flowers in it, my thermos, all these things are deities. They're already deities. The cup from which I drink my tea is a deity. The tea I drink from it is a deity. All of these things are already deities. Our job is to learn to see them as they are. Because at this point, we see them as they are not. So this fourth point is that although the generation stage begins as an act of imagination, it is an imagination of that which is already true. It is an imagination of absolute truth and of that which is real and perfect already. The fifth and final point of how to practice the generation stage in general is that in our encounter with the objects of our 6 faculties, so the objects of our 5 senses and the objects of our mental consciousness, we generate thought, which means, practically speaking, that all the objects of the 5 senses, as we experience them, have already become mental images within our mental consciousness. So this is what we encounter. We encounter things we see, or what we think about what we see, things we hear, or really what we think about what we hear, and so on. The samadhi of the generation stage, according to this 5th point, consists of recognizing immediately, as soon as we encounter these thoughts or perceptions, that they are the deity's nature. That everything we see, hear, smell, taste, feel, and think is the deity. And in that way, recognize that the infinite variety or infinite display of the 6 objects of our 6 faculties is nothing other, in reality, than the infinite display of the deity. So these 5 points are the general principles of how to progress in the practice of the generation stage.
Tambo te chikane son ta kale nyamne se ya ko za teni no ya te se chika melon zongni charwa ni charwa ni chenu tambar pol tin se de yi me long sem te pe sanang dang chin du malam laker dang la lao ta so gomjori so cha gom godri magom na pinka mari gom na temmenji yopate konga soli ichi jaja jayori kare ichi ori sina semar chop tomba derke singa so semar jaja ten gorun bojeda tombare singa so tomba den gorun bojere semar telan jangol tege songyali dorje gtseri tela lawa mewari tela lawa yu tela ichi mina tene nga so gandala try zog zudina so so kableri 소소 그 두추추라 땅야리 대베 추마름도 파야 추체 접사데 상하게 냠네 세차도 조데 다 라마데 주바탐길 이치 템보 요바데 찌보데 이치 땅 대바 템보 요바데 찌바데게 조바치무 냠네나 ndako 송거데 인라베나 조람고 깝상나 고사 망보리 조람데 하라페 짜침보리 주데 탐게나 미드 마랑와 조람데 예나야 korsa chenpo yu songko zoram tada gyude yin tamje na teri zoram tada gyorog yin la nga zo tungkar logo kieka dale yana teri to so la lamta ramba re yin dalo korsa ta norsa ta chuksa ta hal leba yabo re lama yabo ta nyamne yabo ma zen zoba chenpo tundra men song nga so chuju ki drama me pa tele ichi re chi dene tebar chi kola te chepo ke 대가 찬이 생긴 내용한테 연로 송의 조과 전부 체주돼 그러면 돌아기에 거들 대라 고산 축사 자원이 있는 미리 고산 노산 축사 미 송의 가장 효과 초로라는 그 송텔라 달라 고산 노사 가야 미시 고산 현재 차나 유서 현차제나 되어리데 나 고산 노사 가야 메와 대인데 다 대기 거 담보는 지금 어리데 담보 지금 나다는 라스 Nimu tu so labzon kepe tipete nga so ga da tu ko mo ta thang ko mo ta ko par the la ta de tipe yadam ju kon chini da dembam herlam melong ge zong ni nga so ndi na char je melong ge zong ni tam dang chi tan charwa ni rang ge jap mu ta wor ya ne dan de ni chunu chimbo am sing han chu chunu temena da da melong de hergo chimbo yon de na char je na 요와 메버 대종이 부발라 띵세데 다데 띵레리 동담데 가서 다다 총지 배다 총자 동이 저 왕기 왕난데 기거라 상하게 된 총지 배레리 총자 동 나게 샘그네로게 토데니 야담사게 가려냐 대하고 통거 그러면서 펜네 종이 캬딜레 제리티 나오 종이나 희니니 가오레 den de ko mari zongyi phoba la tin se de yi mai long sambo zhe jig de de ba san na ge zar zba ta yi mai ba zhe jig de den de sem ko ra san ne de ko le sem de pe ke chim bo yin song ko re da mar ba lo za ri jue de tam yin na sem ji kyong long de sem ji kyong ba long de pe ke chim bo yin song de mar ba lo za ge kong ge lu ni ya wo jang de jue de long le se rong long wo mar chu pa da gu pa chim bo song de mar ba lo za ge song re jue de jiu song de de nga ge lu chou de ya zong de gu ji za wa de ro lu chou ya bo sang de dou de jin na sem rang long de rang yi ge wo ma len jiu de long wo ma de chu za sang jie cha ri da da lo sam da sam ge ge ja de ri long po jok ge lo sam da sam ji zhou ro ri da de ko long po jok de ko men ni mi da dong mi da de ni long ko ni jing up de la ko jeta ma ni ge si tham na long ge zhang ga de ge lo sam da sam ji de ji zhou yang de long wo ma lan jong de sang jian de ge ge ja re dem de ro ri de de da da de long de pe me si ba ge chen bo de zok chen gom de kam so long de pe me yo ba tin tab je de pe ge chen bo de long de yo ma so na long wo ma la ran yi gen jong de ko long wo ma la zai chu cha de travel long re zai chu chan de zong de sang jian de ko yi me de yi me yo wa de long me yo pin ko long ma yo na long de xiong ba da nan yin de ni sen yo de ko ma de yi me long sum bo zhe le zai je de be san nang ge za zhuo ba dang ci de ni mo ge qi mu de so zhen be dang a ki ma lam zong a sam ba dang ci ma lam zong a dang ge so ma lam zong kin yu se ba re de me se ba rin de na nyam ne sin ge ma lam nyam ne sin ge ga re yo sa rin ga re yo ku yu mi de la dong nang se ke yu mi mi hi de nga so ge ja mang bo hi cha le rin ma hun ro ni zong de da ba de di nang ne nang ne lang rin ki ni bo ri ga sa ga ni ma lam ge ko ra de song de le ri 되네 되라 르파 같이 때 유메데 하고 말이 세무 뜻은 전부 담가 말람 종와 선바다 대마다 니모로 곰바타워 라거르 담와라 라페 말람 종도 말람 생거리 말람 선바 템바 보용와 말람 르바 망보르와 말람 생거 말람 센사데 되니 고 니모나기 차차레 되니 니모레 라차리 nga homa nga de le sa te nga dorun ro be kare na nge ha ko ma so ma nga homa ra malam nymo go je zo ge nyam ne si ya la chimo malam ka so nga ga ko yu den nga cha nyong malam de la le la wo ha ko ya da le la wo lam sang ko je zo ge sa wa kare drum na nymo le la ba re ri ti sam do go le ri nyong de de ten de ne le sa ni ji ni ga mi nga ji dublen da we de ne de la chi me wa 차 성한테 가르 차디 나랑가 하고 마서 가르게 차 유명이 하고 마서 대등의 힘이 길어 니모 대 선바다 대마다 니모로 공바다 사컬라 단 라베 친두제 냐나다 디장 친한게 잡지 디게 델라티네 디장 친한게 잡지데 보침보 통통거리 보통걸 되니 니모가서 내가 그 전적은 세모처럼서 니도 거 바자 내가 히라오 말에 다 내가 청의 총아 의시리 됐어서 대 통통통통 인저리 대니로 니로도 대냐람데 두추출라마다 냐랑 무센서나 내가 침보서 냠니 흉 침보서로 저리다 만남나 델데사르 박차르 공덕이나 초고들 아냐람 간저정거 저와 망보 랩세케리데 나초고 망보 히 차와리 대인데 만남나 대사르가 신나 마니도 람상 타말 람상 고 tamarba lopo rogan the nyarma yon, Bob zon nisan pim yon, de zan nisan of luluwi, zowi, lunamna chudun jia, Deni Lama gom, 1 year lin. 1 year lin ya saya de cheso ke nyamni chira se kho samario sandong e tujanda de ge chiar zho samari sangha saya de tujanda me ba 1 year lin ya tu yi saya de ge chen bo ro nga so tujanda hin do ge zo ka ri ka sa na 1 year lin lama jo lo gom nyin ka lo gom di le ne sam ne o za ka man ten sa tu na 1 year lin deni lama o yo tu yi se de le ki ze je ke di ka so lo pa je Lama zeke the gone wujus 1 year wujus in then one taneke rapat petimbo nendolis osar mountains and tempo nendol di capsatela te nyamjabio nyamja tele danwala teniko chinang malamen yo some man yabori yo some ta lama soran de core te yang san de we sa de tini lama de ninkala gom lama gom na thili gom na so khasa thap khasa ti sala lama gom na chogor lama ninkala ujili yo san ne gom na tela thoyi se na nyalam malami ngusen ho sam malam yamba nguhen so sa ngusam ba ma malam de turjor thobe ho sam malam na nge sawa kare drum da drop tho ho sam malam yang de ne tini nangchi thosam ga samno tong thamna yabori garsi tong ma thamna tele rikpa tin don de jingni songna di salap de ge malam ngusan do malam de ngusan sa de teni malam na ni lega zok choro je zo kare nyam ne sin o di be ge chen bo de tong tong ge menga tong tong re ten tela jwa mambo lep se ba de jwa mambo go ma de ze gom do la de ge lega re trap de la ne lega trabli ri sam nga la yi che o re o de re po thong bo joro
The second part of enhancement of the generation stage has 2 parts. The first is how to increase your skill in generation of the deity. And the second part is how to practice it in a way that brings what is called purification, perfection, and ripening. Now, one of the issues that we often encounter here is that most of you have no background in the sutras. So you don't, there are terms used in Tantra, in Buddhist Tantra, that where you're supposed to know the ordinary meaning of the term as used in the sutras first. And it's kind of what we could say a play on or an extension of that ordinary meaning. So I'm going to have to explain to you a little bit. In the sutras, bodhisattvas on the bhumis are engaged in a 3-fold process. Purification means that they are creating the circumstances for the arising of a pure realm upon their Buddhahood. So, for example, that is what Amitabha did, that is what Akshobhya did, and so on. They make aspirations and they fuel those aspirations through the accumulation of merit so that, when I achieve Buddhahood, may the realm in which I achieve it become like this. We see that Manjushri has done this, Amitabha did it, Akshobhya has done it, and so on. The second aspect of a bodhisattva's process is perfection or completion. And that is their gradual perfection or completion of all of what are called the Buddha Dharmas, or attributes of Buddhahood. And the third, ripening, refers to actually ripening other sentient beings. While still on the path, while still bodhisattvas, they are already engaging in ripening beings, bringing them closer to liberation. So those are the general meanings of those 3 things. As with everything in Vajrayana, the generation stage contains within it the essence of the Mahayana. Everything we do, every specific technique, every aspect of the ritual is a way to actually engage in a practical manner in the Mahayana path right now. But you only understand that if you understand the generic sutra significance of these terms. So we'll come back to that when we get to that second part. But now we're concerned with the first part, which is how to cultivate the basic skill of a generation of the deity. And we say basic here, but remember it's Guru Rinpoche's version of basic, so it's not what we would consider basic. During the day, display an image of the deity, a properly painted, well-painted and accurately painted image of the deity. And you can either look directly at it, or you can put it behind you so that its image is reflected in a mirror in front of you, or in a container of water, reflective water in front of you. Use that reflected image of the deity as a support, as an object of focus, and focus your mind, your eyes, and your breath one-pointedly on the clear appearance of that support. And at night, practice arising in dreams in the form of the deity. So practice turning into the deity during your dreams. During the day, to increase your skill in the generation stage, it's recommended to use a good painting. So it could be a reproduction of a painting or an original painting of the yidam you are practicing. And you can either use the image itself, or what is especially recommended, because it helps with the recognition that the image is insubstantial, is to cause the image to be reflected and look at the reflection. You can do this either by putting the image behind you so that it is reflected in a mirror in front of you, or you can use a container of water and cause the image of the deity to be reflected in that. Obviously, the water has to be still. And what you do is focus your mind one-pointedly on that image of the deity, the reflection of the image of the deity. And you combine three of your faculties together. You focus your mind by directing your eyes to it, looking only at that, and not allowing your mind to become distracted from the mere visual image of that. And at the same time, you bring your breathing to bear on this by slowing down and calming down your breathing. Now, the use of breathing, proper breathing in meditation, and the value of that cannot be exaggerated. For example, one of the reasons we pay so much attention to physical posture is because it affects the breathing. And about physical posture, Lord Marpa famously said that if you put the 13 great tantric cycles that I brought to this country from India on one side of a balance, and you put my correct fivefold physical posture on the other side, that would have even more weight. It would be of even more benefit. And the reason he said that is because when you actually make your body work for you in meditation rather than against you through correct posture, and you allow your breath to settle down, your breath will enter the central channel. And if your breath fully enters into and dissolves into the central channel, then you will achieve Buddhahood. That's why in all Vajrayana practice, and especially in the practice of Dzogchen, calming down and slowing down the breath is so much emphasized. So the daytime practice is to focus your mind, eyes, and breath one-pointedly on the reflected image of the deity. At night, then you can enhance your generation stage practice through lucid dreaming. Now, Lama said, I've talked about lucid dreaming, the practice of lucid dreaming, where you know you're dreaming while you're dreaming, and everything you can do once you stabilize, once you get that going, steadily throughout the years, back to when I taught the preliminary practices. And I don't know how much attention folks have paid to it, because it's usually in the context of another topic. But it's very important. For example, in this text, the stages of the path, we find a brief description of techniques to achieve lucid dreaming. Obviously, to turn yourself into a deity in a dream, you have to know you're dreaming. You have to have lucid dreaming happening. And the best way, Lama said, to do that is, first of all, when you go to sleep at night, don't just drop down onto your bed and lose consciousness like a corpse. When you go to bed at night and lie down, then first of all, while you're still awake, consciously relax. Then in that relaxed state, imagine your guru above your head. Pray to them and receive the 4 empowerments from them, and then dissolve the guru into you. Now, I don't know how much emphasis you all have been placing on receiving the 4 empowerments from the guru in brief post-meditation practices like this, but I can tell you, traditionally, we regard it as very important. So receive the 4 empowerments from the guru and dissolve him into you. And that, if you have devotion, that will cause your mind to come to rest. So remain in that state of rest for a little while. And then when you begin to arise from that, imagine your Guru in your heart this time and pray to him that you dream and that you dream lucidly so that you know you're dreaming, and that you be able to practice transformation in dreams. There are several stages to the practice of conscious dreaming. First of all, there is gaining lucidity, which obviously has to come first. If you're not lucid, if you don't know you're dreaming, you can't choose what to do. But then there is transformation, increasing emanation, making journeys, the cultivation of non-conceptuality, and so on. There are many, many different steps and stages. And Lama said, I know that bringing this up is going to make you all thirst to ask lots of technical questions, but let's not do that. Let's leave it as this brief instruction, he said, because this is all you need right now. I've just explained to you how to take the first steps. And until you take those first steps, going on and on and on about stuff you're not ready to practice is just a waste of our time. So please don't do that. But the point here is a generation stage practitioner uses the dream state to enhance their visualization of the deity. In my experience, Lama said, I used to be able to practice in dreams, including the generation stage, better than I could practice during the day. And this is traditionally said. You can, however good your visualization is during the day, once you get lucid dreaming online, you will be better at it. The image of the deity will far exceed in clarity and stable pride and so on what you achieve during the day. Well, Lama said, but somehow I've regressed. I don't know why. Since I came here, and I really don't know why, I'm not ascribing any reason to it, my dream practice has declined somewhat. But anyway, this is how to do it. Now, another thing he said is, when we talk about the completion stage in general, we're talking about the generation stage, but he did mention this at this point. When we talk about the completion stage in general, there are a lot of potential pitfalls, deviations. Even when we get to the what is considered the apex of completion stages per se, the six-limbed yoga of Kala Chakra, there are said to be lots and lots of pitfalls. So at each step of the six, you face different possible dangers, different possible deviations. The exception to this is Dzogchen. Dzogchen is without the possibility of deviation and pitfall. And we saw this in the teachings of Shabka Tsotro Rongdro that we shared last year. The only possible deviation is if you fixate. But aside from that, there are no deviations to that.
Oh, that's so good. Oh, that's right. Ah, there. Oh, that's nipa las chepar ne song Guru Rinpoche ke kan song ta ngai so te la ta chepar korven na yi ta pa le tar thok nyang de yong zo ta pa ta ne ka rem yi yer member char le par hipe lam chong wa den yor song ta de Guru Rinpoche ta teri, ta teri, nga so ta tanda nyamni sin to ko le kan thap thap sin to ko te ta te so kan ru ko kuma. Somba yep tang kado ga namba lamzi zamji jeram ne sarba lang yu jing song. Ta te yu jing song de sarba ma te pa la to song ra wa de wo ri jeram de ra wa de yo ri te sarba la yu jing ti trim zhe nye tse wa da jeram rangju pa ro ko we Rangde Rudra the Kivalin Rose, Tata Zunge, Ndela Kivalini, Zoja, the Kieram Yabo Mazina, Antaking Bachesona, that they go near Tewak Kieram Rova. That they Matepala Yoris, that thing I saw that pay Tewak Son Corrida. Not so Garilla pay Kieram the Hind corridor, pay Hiembarin. Kieram Hiemba does it, the Zoram Zona, Zokin, the Gong, so Dharma called it. Hiemba dogma, the Zoram Gon, Kieram Korchen Yabo Marida. Only Rada Kiawan Incarate, Palachi Higmatoli. Kieram Higmatop song, the Kieram Comcheta, Lachi, Katanga Tina, and Doa, Higwan Pekale. Then I would hint in him, these certain on the Gongolis on the Lam Ramba, the Ramba, and the Puchung, Love Jante, and so say call it. Con Abatam Jik, Petsewa Chimbo, Guru Rinpoche, the Trubatam Jikim. Jim Ori Rada Javani, Rata Mari, Randano, Jimton Jumbo, Tichinto, Chorpayupe, Teda Lamden Jerve Chepar Jenny Ness, Te Lam the Kari Jorgo, Chepargani, Song and Song Court. Chevar Jev Sepadan Tempe, Jev the Dan, Senu, Nangju Dan, Tempe, Tin Yarieka, Temba Lion Colo, Gombaso. Martin Corbin Nambatan, Tambar Lambda Sepe, Te Nangi Tabale, Take Nangi Tabale, Keep Zokata, Drumji Chuka, Tate Zella, Keep Zoko Goncord, Drumgetin Tartopa, Dondo, the regent of Nanda Memicunigando, Yambar Yako Rangazo, that Tepe Kitchen body, Jerem, Zorum, Jerem Hiki, the Te Marine, the Jerem Kiko, Gomdu de la Yaborcomari. Tin Temba Namda Lai, Jankorto, Tropaso, Yarte, Namzanga, and Dava Marte, and Yarte Martin Korva, the Yarte, and Tin Temba Namda Lai, Jankorto, Tropaso, Yarte, Namzanga, and Rambato, Jorpe, Tartok Yandeke Yondi Zope, Jurun Jorvata, Neko Ramba Niki, Jerem the Zora Ramba Niki, Yatanwale, Zorem Ji, member Tap Cheparkinto, Jorve, Charlepar Kipa. Zoram de pe Messipa, Kitchimborido, Zoram yi him, but tap Chipartindo, Java Celipar Hip, Cornchong me, Balamja Chong and Java, Yanos.
Oh, thank you. The second part of enhancement of the generation stage is how the proper practice of the generation stage leads to purification, completion or perfection, and ripening. Now previously, you were briefly acquainted with the generic meaning of these terms in the sutras, and this is how these terms are these processes are included in the generation stage. First, in Guru Rinpoche's words in the root text, especially through the purification of your fixation on samsaric appearances, ultimately you will complete or perfect the qualities of nirvana. So through the purification of your attachment to samsara, as that process goes on, it will simultaneously lead to the perfection of the qualities of nirvana. In the time being, the generation stage will serve as a ground that ripens you or prepares you for the completion stage. So, understanding this correctly, use the generation stage to reveal the supreme path of the completion stage. Lama said that, as he mentioned briefly yesterday, in answer to your question about the possibility of our being reborn as powerful demons because of practice of Vajrayana if we make the wrong aspirations. This is in part about that. We think of the practice of the generation stage as using our imaginations to generate and maintain images, visual images of the deity. So the way that we ordinarily think of it is we are taking color and shape as the path. The deity is blue. He looks like this. He has this shape. And we think that that's what we're supposed to be doing. If that were the generation stage, if that were all it was, then it would not be a special feature of Vajrayana Buddhism. Lots of non-Buddhist traditions, if you've ever studied these things, do that much. Imagining colors and shapes and humanoid figures and so on. I mean, this is not unique. So clearly, there has to be more to it than that. And if we leave our generation stage as just that, just maintaining as vivid as possible imagery of colors and shapes. All over the world now, people talk about imagery exercises and imagery this and imagery that. The only result we're going to get is an ephemeral, temporary result. It is also dangerous to do that. It is dangerous. People wonder, why is the generation stage even that secret? Well, this is why. Because if you get good at that, but limit your skill, your practice to that, and you really solidify the image, if you're really good at it, you could become Rudra. That's how to become Rudra. If you want to become Rudra, that's how to do it. More likely, especially if you're not like a superstar at bad generation stage, but just assiduous, you do it a lot, conscientiously, but with rigidity, you'll become a powerful demon, which means that you'll die, and your mind will take the form of the image you generated, but it won't be the yidam per se, it'll be your version of it, filled with your ego and corrupted by your own neurosis. You'll become a very powerful demon. What Guru Rinpoche said about this was, if you do that, and it's a wrathful deity, you will become a preta with the form of that wrathful deity, a skyborn preta, and which is what these demons are. and you'll go all over the place hurting people. And this has really happened. There are some of these right now in the world. If it's a peaceful deity and you fixate in that way, you probably might become some kind of minor god and then suffer downfall. And when gods suffer downfall, they almost invariably go to hell because they don't do anything good. They just have fun. And so they use up all their merit. Like when someone is having a lot of fun and not doing anything good, it's a really bad sign for them because it means they're going downstairs. If someone is doing a great deal of good and having no fun at all, it's a really good sign because it means they're headed upstairs because they are using up all of their leftover bad karma. So that's not what we want to do. So how do we avoid that? Basically, the way that we avoid that is through observing, and there are safeguards, don't worry, observing the correct structure and format of the generation stage. Here, Guru Rinpoche and in commentary Jamgon Lodro Thaye explain this format as what is called threefold correspondence. Now I know you're going to get mixed up because there's so many threes. Threefold bearing, threefold this, threefold that. This is another one. You've heard about this before, but not when Lama's been teaching, only when I've been talking. During the last seminar on the White Book, but here it is. These are downward correspondence, upward correspondence, and path correspondence. Downward correspondence means that the structure, format, and process of our generation stage practice always corresponds in a downward way to what we have gone through and will go through unless we end it. Death, birth, and becoming. So basically, we generate the deity, which corresponds to becoming and birth, and at the end we withdraw the image, which corresponds to death. Then after withdrawing the image and meditating, we re-arise as the deity in post-meditation, which corresponds to the bardo. So the downward correspondence is that our the process or sequence of our generation stage is not haphazard, but corresponds to and therefore is conducive to purifying our samsaric cycle, our samsaric process. Also, Lama said, one of the reasons why we practice the dissolution of the generation stage at the end of the session or the end of the day is so that we not fixate on or solidify the image of the visualized deity. Because it is the solidification of that identified with image that can lead to a rebirth as a demon. Also, if you consider the realm and palace of the deity, they correspond to the external environment and the beings who inhabit it. So, by meditating upon the palace and the deities within it, we are engaging in the downward correspondence of purifying our samsaric experience. So therefore, that purifies our fixation on or craving for samsara by replacing it with the recognition of the purity for the reasons that were described by Lama earlier. But there's also an upward correspondence, and that means that the process not only purifies samsara, but it perfects the qualities of Buddhahood. By generating ourselves as a deity, we start to perfect the qualities of the Rupakaya, or form body. And by dissolving or withdrawing that image, we start to perfect the qualities of the Dharmakaya. So in that way, because although the generation stage does correspond to the sequence of samsara, it is also an image or representation of the attributes of Buddhahood or nirvana. So therefore, it is a cause not only of the purification of samsara, but of the ultimate acquisition of the qualities of nirvana. In the present, it lays the foundation for our practice of the completion stage. So therefore, it ripens us to the point where we can approach the practice of the completion stage. So for example, the visualization of lotuses corresponds to the chakras of the suns and moon, to the red and white constituents, and so on. All of these different aspects, each and every one of them can be shown to have a specific correlation with a specific aspect of the completion stage. So therefore, if your generation stage corresponds to and therefore purifies samsaric clinging rather than reinforcing it, if it corresponds to and therefore will ultimately lead to the perfection of the qualities of nirvana, and if it becomes the foundation for and therefore ripens you to be able to practice the second stage, the completion stage, then it will be without possibility of deviation and pitfall. And you will not be reborn as a demon.
So, then there that ke Lama Bani ke Jerem sorry, that Zoram Gonek Pondona to Nipa Zoram Je Pondona, some the Zalong, Chalam, Zoram, Jay Pondon, Dreva the Jeba, so Tambo te Kariris in the Zalong, Takana, I sang Guru Rinpoche Karison Gendo, Sapungo, get the thousand.
That's up the drogary.
Saying that it's a Tambeori. Tako Sapungo Chazze get the Jake Tago sings.
Oh, that's
Sapungo to the Tango Rinpoche Zondra. You do a Sapungo, and Sap go the.
Oh, Japu.
Japungo.
Oh, Japu.
Japungo Chazze get a Tao sings. Conso, Jata the Hioma, call the Tago. Yena call on Yabur Zotokoma, Japungo Chazze, Tago, saying at the Druke, Kepangaric Lojori. Then the Japungo Chazze get sick Tago. Trunkor some sign the patro, Parlong Taker, Zampenyamni G, Long Sen Rangding, Hibanat, Parlong Repe, Kitchenbody Yamni, Zone of Secuno, Tomo. Bandang Nyamjukon the Teen, Santa Te, Hiole Tade, Beke Chimbo Tade, Kitchimbo. Oh, de la Randu Tabdi Nyamslim, but says on Tao Chakin Kamalo, go Dewachimbo tea, say at the Zonim, the Sochia de Hiya, the rate, and the Randu Tabdi, de la Zalong, Jangin, Zalong, Nubachimbo, called the Jatan Danga, so. Zalong the Jang Capso, Lobo, Yoni Capso, Zalong the Jango, the Deco, Yam, member Capso, Zat, Long Tilly Yonzo, member Capso, nobody Hok Cheho, the Gang Dayan, round the Tabdi Yamselim, but say, that's round the tin, yin the tin, that he just going to hit Sarwadi, so Tansan Namso. Libjon Trunkor Samo, Menga Lalin Jini the Dimba Lambe, but Zain the Banam Troso, Menga Lalin the Dimba, say I think Tazu Koni, Zoram de la, Conchoman Boyori, de la Menga Lalin the Dimba, Lama Juba Zambo, Lama Nyamneji, the other Tsekwa Kambo Samya, he bought some Maimba, Nyams Lan, Troa Nyongdili. Lama Tandrakateni, Mahone, Teni, Sosoga, Data, Yanda, Co Nyamni Sena, Teni, Co Pinto Chimbunjonko, the Zonam Teri, Ten, Tonkorti, Jangjo, Teri, Zalong Trape, Zamin Jambion di Kiwaka, Song, the Barodoji, Ikan Nana Song, then to take Kola Chokgyar the Zalong the Gomni Caps, Chokgyar, Yonuka Caps in the Chatan, Yam member Caps, Pinko, the Teg said, Naso Yomba Tamjik Lali, yes, on the Talan Trolani, the Talan the Yomba Tamjik Lali, on the Sonkor, Takaju Sanga, Lubjon Tronkor Samu Menga Lali, Nidan, Dimbalam Bepane, Zain the Patos, Lubjon Seat, and Tronkorte. CD and Trunkor Jabsona, Parsenga Caps and Trunkor Jatona, Trunkorte gets signed to Bachatan, Rangi Copa, Hingokoli. Nazo Zachi, Chagan the Baz and the Chigi, Chow did or the Zatomba said. Zade Chaza the Long Zani, Banani, Long Rosak Zayonzo, the Kuchabi did or that. Zain some dudes and the Batendi or Marisonga, they he and your lucky flat over, say the Nini Chachava, Tomba, etc. Sticky over. Then the long John, the Pondorako. Oh, these certain Trunkor the Jago. Trunkor the Laleda Dimban, Trunkor Yama, Lale Madin and Trunkor Long John Joko. Then the Juba Dimba and Dimbagon and Trunkor de Lambe, but some do sign the Banam Torne, the long rang in the genre. Long woman outside Yin Rojang Tamjin, the Rojani woman, the woman in Lagatam, Yin Lagatam, Yin Lagatam, Zatong Danjala, so but the Dana Zatoma song upon Zanya Chekon Las over Changme by Yori, Baba Combo the Yam song, the so Chatsama de Copa Jango, Jango then Lopola Nubata, top down. You did cat chamber chain call it, take a Tilly young parent call it, Tilly Cassin parent and Nubata as a chair hold it. The teacups and Trunkor the Jagore, Trunkor Java, Tilly, Zoran, Sakin the Zokin, Talan, Dorlam Yamina Pink called and Trunkor the Red Jan, Namdog Tambi, Rangi Pachino, Namdo the Rangi Tito, the Rabak Konagan on the Jinchilhang, name called it, Dela Torchik, Dramond Hall, then the Trunkor the Pekation boy, yes, on God, the party alone, Teva, Tekarajan, the Palona, Tekarajan, Palong. Long Kumo Bibi Mugo song, the Samonando, the Kamabaka, Long Kumo Bibi seen the jet so, and Trunkor, long young Michiko, and Garaka. The so Kumo Bibi Mugo song, and there's a long the Korang Rangi, Palong de long the Rangi, long some year meet that's like some no dance on not there was some no dance on Rangi, called woman and Joe song. They called Tomo Maiba Chetur Kamabaka song, Samonando de then Long Kumo Bibi, the Mihilitari, that Rijo Rizalong Trabu Zamin Yenson, the Hina Yabo, the Tado, Part Long Dewa Taker, Yang Den Zamba, Sama Yihi Chimbo, Long George, Long Semje, Nyopa, Chara, Ransar, then he traveled to Batan, Rabat to Batan Ransar, then traveled to Batan Ransar, the tend, Rabat to Batan Ransar, the tend, Trawa Numakan over the Linking. Eating over the ranking, eating the chapter song you banana, ha, cotton, ha concord, linking Yumi, he said the key trap travel the Zanon got the king to Corva, the ranking, ha concord answer, then keep not the pepper and Javata, then Java tongue, Tumu, Meme, Yam Yato, Gonkin, then it tell a thing at Tomogom. Then some Tomo Utron of Johnson, the Gondor, Zonki Mambondo. The thing you have more Jubaka. Don't know the Sala interviews on Kagala, two Tomo Jankus, Tomo Gongus, two Tomo the Lobjan Canizoza, you drop now locus, you drop video nani, I'm no guru, not guru mila, I'm no guru. Then a country in Janko. You drop Nana Chasandos, you drop Nam studies on the Tomo Janko, you took it, Nala Mambo, good luck like you, then Yahako Mila, good luck like you, then Ajuba meaning Yahakoma, things are die, you drop down, then Guru Rinpoche, that of Jansi Samambo, sorry. Guru Rinpoche,
Google
Rinpoche. Guru Rinpoche mind Guru and Zonke Mambo, you drop mind Guru and Zonke Mambo, things are this time lots of people have and Guru, you drop Guru, say Guru Rinpoche, yes, good luck. That long at there, take some long semi new what Tara tension, not the paper and Tomo, Telatin, Tenitomo Gomji, Yam the Gomji, Jitop the Magom Rinjos, Jitop the Tomo Gomyata, Tomo one, Tramore. Sanchop so net in Yamjin Risa, Joe Mamma, Yam Yakabso, Tomogom, Jetokabs, Tomola Samo Kira, Lonsen Yermido, Gom Rogo, Zona Gonde, Rinjo Ginger, Nupanipa, Majorvan Barbasana, Tenicale, Lula Tuja, Kale, Lula Teje, Sana, Yamjito, Machapa, Teni tea capsula, true tell a charmayo. Tea caps, true the chain, the Devasho Chimbochi and Corridor. Gare Tomogong, and other Tuji handle the Devachi Hamado and the Lankin or leads Dozonki, though the Takantariat so sensitive injury. The true kids are the true dealer, Tomo de Duramber, the Devaraki. They call Yaviam Sondari, Taki Yermiri. Dini tea Tomo to get Devatela, Sunya Mili Devaraki. Tea cups Devatela, young Chamini is only. Chamini is on the Tend of Gomjes and Yamji to Ganda Machi Timbar Gomba Nam need the Karcheva or need the Chi or something. Salon cups or two. Yeah, then the name.
So that completes the explanation of the enhancement of the generation stage. And now we turn to enhancement of the completion stage. And this has three sections. Enhancement of the practice of the channels and winds, enhancement of the path of desire, and enhancement of the completion stage in general, along with a statement of its result. Now, just to be clear here, we need to make a distinction in this text and otherwise between the completion stage and the great perfection of Dzogchen. Here we're talking about the completion stage, which is not the practice of Dzogchen. It's separate. It can help it, and they influence one another, but it's separate. Because you'll see that what's going to be described here is not without danger. So first of all, at this point, when turning to the root text, I thought I heard Lama say, let's see what profound things Guru Rinpoche has to say, but he didn't, because I misunderstood his accent. And he was joking, and he gave Guru Rinpoche an awful nickname that I hate, because it's used by those who do not have faith in Guru Rinpoche. And it's making fun of his crown, which has a vulture feather at the very top. So it's Featherhead. He said, well, let's see what Featherhead has to say. And I couldn't actually believe that I was hearing this from somebody with so much faith in Guru Rinpoche, but it's so, yeah. Okay. Through profound physical exercises, untie the knots of your channels. By directly holding the intermediate breath, through the practice of directly holding the intermediate breath, or the middle breath, wind mind will vanish of itself, and your mind will settle. Stabilize the radiant blaze of Chandali throughout all states, both meditation and post-meditation. Okay. Essentially, the completion stage consists of two paths. Now again, we're talking about the completion stage per se, not Dzogchen. We're leaving Dzogchen aside for now. The path of means and the path of liberation. Ultimately, the path of liberation dovetails with Dzogchen, but it's not necessarily Dzogchen. The path of means has two parts. The employment or making use of your own body as the means, and making use of the body of another as knowledge. So, whether you go on to practice making use of the body of another as knowledge or not, you first of all must practice. If you're going to practice the path of means, you must practice making use of your own body as the means. Because only through that practice can you gain control of the channels and winds or energy and essence. So when someone is practicing this as their principal practice, then in between sessions, they must engage in certain physical exercises. These are profound physical exercises. They're also quite dangerous. If they're done, I've seen many people be injured by practicing them improperly. And if you do them wrong, you're moving your energy around through your body. So you can move it to where you want to move it, but if you don't do it right, you're going to move it where you don't want to move it. So it's a little bit like when you're eating and you swallow down the wrong pipe. Well, imagine that it's like that, but it's mostly the other end, and it's your mind that you swallow down the wrong pipe. I'll let you imagine the rest. But these exercises must be done. If you're pursuing the path of means, they must be done. Because they're the only way, as Lama said, to untie the knots of the channels. Now, Lama reiterated what he said last year, which is that according to his grandfather, when we say channel knots, we imagine knots, like knots in a rope. And he said, don't take it too literally. What it actually means is that in our body we have two kinds of channels. We got blood channels, which are the ones we can see, and we have wind channels or energy channels, if you want to use that word. The energy channels that we want our energy to flow through tend to be blocked. And the way to know if your channels are blocked or not is very easy. Are you happy? If you're not happy, they're blocked. If you're perfectly happy, like Buddha, then they're perfectly unblocked. If you're mostly happy, then that's good. But blocked doesn't mean that there's crud in them or that they're knotted. according to Lama's grandfather, what it means is because they've fallen into disuse, because the energy is going through the wrong channels, they're like tubes that have become flat and stuck together. Which means that the only way to open them back up is with force. And the force is you have to force the energy, the winds, into these channels so that you pop them open. I guess it's a little bit like angioplasty, except there's no balloon. It's just your breath energy. So the function, one function, it's not the only, but the function that is mentioned here in our text of the exercises is to force those flattened or closed, stuck together channels open. And obviously that takes force, which is why the exercises are extremely forceful and therefore potentially physically dangerous if they're not properly taught, not properly practiced. The other thing that is essential for anyone practicing the path of means, and even if you don't principally practice the path of means, this is an excellent idea, is to always practice intermediate breathing, which is where, without great exertion, you distend your belly and you breathe as low as possible into your abdomen, and you hold the breath for at least a little while in between breathing in and breathing out. In writing of this, in his profound inner meaning or profound inner principles, the third Jamgon Kongtrul Rangjung Dorje made the point that people often mistake the practice of Buddhist pranayama as turning their body into some kind of bellows, where they attempt to force air into because they hear about it, and we do use terms like breathe forcefully and so on, which is not the middle breathing, but what's called forceful breathing. But then they try to inhale as much as they can and hold as much as they can for as long as they can, and they think that they're going to somehow athletically force their way into awakening. He said it's not like that. It has to be a natural process. Anyway, through this practice of intermediate breathing, which is called here the wind application of great secret wisdom. The impurities of your wind and mind, because your breathing and your mind are inseparable, will naturally just vanish like clouds in the sky. And your mind will settle. So I'll tell you something. And this is, I'm not bragging about me, but I am bragging about my training, which I think I'm allowed to do. When I was 22, I was taught in the context of beginning a 3-year retreat to always breathe this way. We all were. In a 3-year retreat, they teach you, whatever you do, always practice the intermediate breathing. And I never really thought about it since then. I've done it because it's not that difficult. Anyone can do it. You just have to do it, and once you get used to doing it, you forget how else you breathe. And I went to at one point I developed bronchitis several years ago, and I had a chest x-ray. And the x-ray technician said, "You're either a swimmer or a smoker." And I said, what? I'm neither. I can barely swim, and I've never smoked. He said, well, you have swimmer's lungs. And I said, what? And he showed me. When you breathe this way, because you're using the diaphragm in a certain way, your lungs lengthen the way an athlete would. God knows I'm no athlete. I am so not an athlete. But I'm not a smoker, and I realized that there are so many, anyway, so just make him teach you. So that's one thing, and that you can do whether you're a hotshot path of means practitioner, which I'm not, believe me, I'm not that either, or not. That anyone should be learning that Balong, intermediate breathing. Kaso nadu de Balong kala zongyat mato rewamda. De chipu penso.
Balong pe pengre.
Balong pe pengre.
Balong di yazi yo mari jondo nyamni da na ta kare na balong.
Le labo yo are. Konso la kala lov na konso sheyon.
Shigre tate konso nyamni si gomna shigre de lom.
Recently I got so sick, and I've done this off and on through the years, but I got so sick that there was, Ilya and I both got sick, and we didn't know what it was. It felt like our first cases of COVID, and it wasn't COVID. I mean, we tested the normal way twice, and then she went to the city and got the fancy ass test, and it wasn't COVID, it wasn't flu, it wasn't RSV, it wasn't a rhinovirus, so who knows. I'm just glad none of you got it, except one of you did. But it was horrible. I cannot begin to describe how awful this was. My weak point is my stomach, so I got sick to my stomach first, and I didn't eat for almost a week, and all kinds of stuff. And then she got sick too. The only way I got through that, seriously, the absolutely only way, was by lying absolutely still on my back, slowing down my breathing, and practicing this intermediate breathing as consciously and slowly as possible. And as long as I did that, I could stand it. I wasn't great, but I could stand it. As soon as I became distracted from that, especially if I had to speak or something, it was hell. So, and I told Lama this story, and he said, of course, intermediate breathing is famous for helping with any physical discomfort. So, anyway, get him to teach you. So, sorry I'm making work for you. But,
no, that's good.
The other thing is that, so the first thing about the path of means is you have to do these dangerous physical exercises. And then the second thing is you have to practice, maintain this intermediate breathing all the time, which you're soon going to learn when he teaches you. You're going to want to do anyway, because it's not dangerous and it's really good for the mind and the body, and anyway. But then the last point in this section is that when you're practicing Chandali, and basically what happens with Chandali, Lama said, is that you generate the appearance of flame, fire within your body, and that produces heat or warmth. And then the heat or warmth leads to bliss, at which point you have to not become attached to the bliss or crave it. But for that to work, it has to be constant. So it's not enough when you're practicing Chandali just to practice it during sessions and then forget about it in between. You have to maintain some post-meditative awareness of Chandali as well, if you're doing that. Now about this path of means, Lama said that Chögyam Dorje wrote that basically because the path of means involves physical exertion, physical difficulty, difficult exercises, and so on, it's an appropriate practice for the young. So young people, when people enter the path as youngsters, in the teachings of the Param Kaju in general and in Terchen Baba Dorje's teachings in particular, they're encouraged to practice the path of means. And the idea is that by practicing it when you're young, the qualities of it will emerge even during middle age and seniority. Whereas those who enter the path in middle or later age are best advised to focus on the path of liberation, because the path of means will be physically difficult, and also your channel's energy and essence are not as they're not what they were. So yeah. In a shaggy.
Oh, the neck walking. Oh, yeah, that okay, how do we stop there? And the dedication. Oh, Tamba Kunye Doba Yo Sanjo Sene Ramboje Maje Panam Jeje Jeba Nyamba Meba Da Gone Gondo Bewa Yo Simje Tamje Deda Denja Namje Dada Dombara Yo Sanjo Samba Kanda Saryo Ba Deda Ganje Mola Draba Yo Sanje Rejen Zenze Dambe Ga Jagan De Ya Danda Lemba Samye Me Zon Reve Sanga Je Zeye Zonda Jabe Thank you, everyone. Lama yoga.